Usually it does start with an assessment. The assessment doesn't have to be a formal one. I use a few, and most coaches, there's a whole host of assessments. My favorite assessment when it's a formal one, it is, and by that I mean not just my own intuition and getting to know the person a bit, getting a sense for who they are, is the saboteur assessment that I use from the positive intelligence approach. And the reason being that it goes right away into what are the 9 shades of negative thought patterns that a person has developed over their lifetime. And the power I find in there is, so when they get the report, there is almost always a massive resonance with something of it. It's like, wow. In a way of, that's what that is. I had no idea. And they realize how this has gotten in the way of things that they really deeply wanted all their life. Sometimes that is to be themselves, to be the best version of themselves, and they don't know how to get over it. And people keep telling them like, but you're constantly over things, or you're like so arrogant, or you're like this. They know they are not deep inside. But how to not come across that way, they have no idea how to get there.
That, right.
Right. So, and at the same time, to then be able to help them see that this is coming from their core strength is almost like now you're tapping into that power that they have and say, okay, and it's beautiful, and look at you. And what this means is that thing that you think is getting in your way is only getting in your way if you think of a toolbox that you have with a screwdriver and a hammer and a whole bunch of different things in it. But your favorite is the hammer.
Yeah.
And you really like the hammer, so you're going to use the hammer for everything.
For everything.
And then go like, well, the hammer made a hole in the wall. I didn't mean to make a hole in the wall, but the hammer is my favorite tool. Mm-hmm. You completely forgot you had other tools you could use. Maybe screwdriver would have been better, or maybe the drill would have been more appropriate first. So it really gets to right away to the core of giving them an idea and putting them in touch with some of the strength which will resonate. Because their belief in that moment is like, but wait a second, this really rational thinking that I'm doing that in the report comes back as a hyper-rational, that's getting me the PhD that I have.
Right.
Okay, I'm really good analytically, so what, are you going to take that away from me too? And now I'm nobody anymore. And that's when the fear comes in and the judge right away.
Right.
It's like, oh, no. What happens is if you were to actually use that rational thinking ability when it's appropriate and then only, and what if you were to be able to also connect with your spouse? Not trying through your brain,
right,
but actually really bringing in the heart. And now everything starts shifting. What would that look like? The first thing I do is I try to make them feel seen. In that very much. You're very busy. I see like you must be very good at what you're doing. Right. You're super busy. Like, are you sure this is a good time for us to still talk?
Right.
I never mention soul work.
Right.
I never do.
Right.
I mean, we now talk about this. We're getting underneath the hood. So
digging in, right.
Right, exactly. When I work with people, I don't. What I ask them is like, what do you want? Especially when there is resistance.
Right.
What do you really want? And then they say something like, well, I don't really know. Like, what do I want? Well, that's a really tough question.
Right. I've never thought about it, or nobody ever took the time to ask me what I want.
Yeah. And then as they're talking, I'm thinking about what makes them tell me what they're telling me now. What is it that motivates them to say this? Because they could choose from their whole life anything. Why this thing? And I try to listen for that why and then play it back. So what I'm hearing you say is, you really are tired of working 12-hour days. Right. You love the success you have. You know you're very good at what you're doing, but you're really tired of that. Yeah. You bet. Right.
They said
Next.
that right away.
Come on.
Quick.
Yeah.
Okay, you tapped into something here.
Yes.
Give you another 5 minutes. You're right.
Right. And then it really gets into a little bit more of that. So this whole making them feel seen and heard is like a cycle throughout the whole conversation at every step, because sometimes it's like, it's like, what's in that I never really thought about this, and you're making me think of this, and now you're going into another place. So oftentimes it's a way of kind of getting to where they want to go.
Right.
Always go where they want to go. Mm-hmm. But also hearing the things they don't say that where they want to go, but they're still there. That's the soul talking, or whispering maybe. And to see if they're open to it. And sometimes they're not open to it yet. And it's okay. It's like if there's something there and they're like, yeah, no. But then sometimes it's just like, if you only could give me like, I just need like a tool. I'm having a really tough conversation coming up. Right. So how can I make this like go better?
That I can grab onto.
Right. It's like, okay, so with the tactile, and here is what you do when you do that. Oh, that's super helpful. Great, I can do that. Thank you. That's helpful. And then the second one might be a little structure for a hard conversation. Make sure that the other person feels seen too. If they're stressed out and you notice they're stressed out and you notice they're afraid and they're scared, say that.
Right.
You look really scared. I want to put you at ease. It's not that bad. Right. I just wanted to have a conversation because I really want you to advance in your career, and there's something there that I feel like might get in your way if you're not aware of it, so that way you can change it. What do you think? And now you're having a mutual conversation about it.
Right.
Very different from, all right, let me get straight to the point.
Right.
Here.
Right. Here is, sit down and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to listen. That doesn't always work with everybody, right?
And it's because we're as managers, they themselves are like stressed out and afraid of what the reaction is going to be. So they're like, they're in survivor mode, and guess what? The other person's thinking, oh my God, this is going to be bad news. Yeah. They're in survivor mode, right. And now you're going to have a fruitful conversation.
It's tense to begin with, right? It's tense, and fear and worry, and
I became the leader of a person who had a couple of warnings from HR. Like a couple more times one more time you're gonna get too close to somebody in an aggressive way and you're out of here. I knew the person. I knew he was brilliant. And HR told me, like, listen, it's already kind of, agreed upon. So in our first one-on-one, I got into the room, small room, big windows, and there's a little round table in the middle of the room, and he's sitting all the way by the window, just like turned away from the room, really. So as I'm coming in on the other side.
So not looking to engage,
right away. You're not even there and you're seeing him, see?
I can see him there,
Exactly. And I notice him. Now I could have just sat down at the table and said, hey, like, ready to start the meeting. And ignore what I've noticed. But what I noticed is the last place he wanted to be was there.
Right.
Now I could have gone in starting to interpret that, right? Like, you don't want to be here, you hate me already, or be afraid. What's going to happen? Is he come at me out of that corner suddenly, right? Because I've gotten the warnings. And I just shared with him what I noticed. I said, so tell me, why are you still here? And he was like, what? I said, why are you still here? You're obviously miserable. The last place you want to be is here, given where you're sitting, the way you're sitting there. Nobody is tying you to a table or a chair or a pillar here. So what keeps you here? I said, well, nobody ever asked me that question before. Then we started having a conversation. 2 weeks later, he resigned. And he invited me for coffee. And he said, I really have to thank you. I've been miserable for 6 years. And I didn't even know until you asked me that question. And we finally decided we're moving to LA. I got a different job. And thank you for asking me that question.